You ever go to LinkedIn or go to a conference and see somebody else who's just nailing it with their content marketing? And I'm always curious, how are they doing it? What does it look like behind the scenes? So in this podcast, that's what we're going to explore. I'm going to ask dumb questions of smart people to figure out how content marketing is working these days and how you and I can take away actionable steps for our businesses. Welcome to the podcast.
Ben Wise, I am the founder of Story.
It's easy to write off social media and be like, okay, yeah, it doesn't work.
Adapt it to who you are.
Hey, Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, Justin, excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I'm excited to have you on because I've talked to a lot of people in marketing, I've talked to content purists, so to speak. They're just in the content space. You have a different take on how to leverage content for leads. And I want to dive into this with you because it's something I've been thinking about a lot as a content guy myself. So if you could introduce, tell our audience what it is you do with content and what you also do when it comes to DM, specifically LinkedIn. I don't know if you use any other platforms. I assume it's just LinkedIn, but can you tell me about that?
Yeah, for sure. So look, to give a little bit of context, I started on LinkedIn, doing LinkedIn marketing 7 years ago, a little bit over 7 years ago. And I actually started in outreach marketing, like reaching out. I used to work for a LinkedIn automation company, and they had this software that basically you could use to reach out to people and hopefully get clients that way. Back, 7 years ago, that was kind of like the approach because LinkedIn hadn't done much with content. It was mostly a platform for networking and doing that kind of like sales approach. You could send out 100 connection requests per day, which was like crazy. And then obviously it was a little bit of a volume game because, if you can message 100 people a day, even if the message is not relevant to all of them, you are going to get business out of it just because it's volume, right?
It's volume of people seeing your profile. Oh, I like what Matt's talking about. I haven't. It's just, yeah. I was talking with a guy in the Marines last Saturday. He said there's accuracy by volume, which is this idea if you bomb the field with enough bombs, you'll get the target eventually.
Exactly. That's the same approach. It's not necessarily the best approach that I would recommend right now, but like it works in specific channels and it worked at a specific time on LinkedIn. But then when LinkedIn started migrating a little bit more towards content, which was around a little bit before COVID hit, actually, I think 2019 was when the first big year that LinkedIn kind of like opened out the gates for organic reach on the platform. That's when Justin Welch's of the world came to the platform and all of that. I started getting involved a little bit more on the content side of things. And that's actually also when I stopped working for this company and I started going a little bit more into my own business. So I actually started doing, just for context, my business was focused primarily on content. So I ran a content agency for a while. I actually still do that for a few clients. But now the platform has changed again, where the organic reach has pretty much significantly declined for the average user. Maybe if you're an influencer and you already have like this large following and like traction on the platform, you're still getting good reach. But for the average user, the reach has decreased significantly. So now it's a little bit more of okay, now what do we do? Do we stop using LinkedIn as a channel? And actually what we've been doing is we migrated to doing a little bit more of the outreach, like for our clients, on behalf of our clients, reaching out to people and helping them basically create conversations that lead into business opportunities. It's not the same approach as when I initially got started with LinkedIn, where it was, just message everyone and someone will buy. Now it's a little bit more, like super targeted. Let's make like a very good list of people that we can reach out to. Let's have like an actual strategy behind what we're going to say, how we're going to say it, the actual product that we're going to offer. And then instead of just pitching everyone, let's let's aim to create conversations, because from those conversations is where the opportunities will come. And we still complement that with content. Like content still has like a role on this, but I would say that for the majority of clients, it's a little bit more of a supportive role than like the main thing that's gonna drive the majority of your business on autopilot.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, and that resonates with my experience. In fact, I think when you and I connected initially, I don't expect you to remember this because you have quite a few followers, but I think when we connected, you were in the content marketing space purely, and this was a couple years ago or so, year and a half ago, and so I watched your journey a little bit. And I know you and I've DM'd a little bit over the last 2 years, and seen your journey of trying to figure out where you're going to go with this, and that's why I was really interested. I know when you put that post out there a couple weeks ago or something like that, you said, "Hey, I'm looking for more podcasts." I'm like, I want to talk to Matt because his approach sounds very interesting, because I have noticed what you're talking about with the drop in reach. My own post used to get 500 to 1,000 views on average to my 8,000 or so followers. And now, I'm lucky to get maybe 100, maybe 200. I'll pop back up into the few hundreds every so often, but it really has dropped. And so for someone like me that offers a pure content approach to my clients, it really begs the question of, where does the value stop being valuable if views start declining? Now, you can have the approach that I've seen a lot of other content purists talk about on LinkedIn, which is eventually, and I do talk about this a bit myself, like if you are staying in touch with your network with content, that still has value, especially if you're selling a high ticket item, like a $50,000 service. Like, what are you going to do instead? Just not say anything? No, I don't think that's the right approach. But that's why I was very excited to talk with you, because you meld both approaches. And I didn't realize that background about you, Matt, that you had that. First, you started out with the automations and the DMs approach, the spray and pray, and then you moved to content. And now you're back in a season where you're melding both. So far, how long have you been doing that two-pronged approach?
I would say for the past 8 months, more or less. We kind of like, so it's been actually something that I've been seeing for a while, because the reach in impressions and organic impressions is not something that happened overnight. I would say it has been happening for the past year and a half. Easily, it's been constantly declining. Now I would say it's been the worst it has been in the last 5 years, probably. It was a hard shift. Like, I'm not going to lie, because obviously when you start a business and then you're going in one direction and all of a sudden the rules of the game change, and then you kind of like have to reinvent yourself. So yeah, it took some time, but we've been doing that. Not for everyone, because some clients we still have that are 100% content, but basically all new clients are with the new approach, outreach and content as a supportive role.
Got it. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. With the new approach, I think you said something like the rules of the game have changed, and the rules of the game are set by LinkedIn, essentially, by the algorithm, by of quite a few factors, not just the algorithm. I'm sure there's other factors like new people joining the platform affects that, or lack of that, plus more people creating content. So there's more content to go around. So supply and demand kind of an issue is what I've heard it talked about. But the point is, the game has changed. What are you seeing now? You're 8 months into this new process. I'm sure you're still trying things out, but compared to the pure content approach, now with this mixed content as a supporting tool, and we're using DMs primarily to initiate more conversations, can you kind of tell me is there a contrast there between results? Like for example, like what would you advertise as the result before, and now what are you advertising as the result, and what's been the reception? Maybe give me an example of the change, and what's the outcome now for clients versus what was it back then?
What people say the outcome is not necessarily what really is. And it's a little bit of a marketing game there. And I think when content was kind of like king on LinkedIn, and you could post something and it could reach thousands of people, even if you didn't have that many followers, the whole concept of personal brand became super important on the platform. And a lot of people started to sell a personal brand as the equal, or like as the same thing as getting clients for your business. In other words, a lot of people started to say that if you build your personal brand, you're going to get clients for your business, or you're going to drive inbound leads for your business. And that appealed to many people on LinkedIn, because I feel a lot of business owners, they feel really uncomfortable with sales, and they feel really uncomfortable with having to find clients, like literally do whatever it takes to find those clients. I feel a lot of business owners, they are good at a specific skill. For example, especially coaches, consultants. I'm just going to use a consultant as an example. If you used to work at a corporate job for many years, and then you decided, okay, you used to work in HR, and then you decided, okay, I'm gonna, I have the experience, I have the credibility, I'm gonna set up my own consulting business, and now I'm gonna start consulting to other companies in what I know, which is HR. They don't have the skill of marketing and sales. So it doesn't come natural to them to actually go and find clients and understand it's not just about posting your ideas and all of the sudden people will come to you and say, oh, I want to buy from you. It takes more than that. To be honest, it's something that I think everyone who has been in business for a while kind of like goes through that learning phase to understand how hard it is to actually get people to buy from you and convince total strangers to buy from you. So to your question of what used to be the result that I used to sell, to be honest, I always try to stay away from selling content as a lead generation tool. I did try it, but then I realized it's not really the case for the majority of people. Yes, you can post, and yes, it will drive inbound leads, not always the right inbound leads, which is a big thing that you also need to think about. But I simply try to sell it more as a, you have to have a presence, and you have to have something that reminds people that you're there. And more than that, you also have to have something that when people visit your profile makes you look credible, and it makes people think, oh, this person actually knows what he's talking about. And it kind of like creates this content has a great thing is that it builds trust at scale, right? Like you can get people to see your content and you never speak to them, but just because they're consuming your content, it builds a relationship. Maybe not the deepest relationship as if you're actually chatting with someone, but it builds a relationship, and that matters a lot.
Totally matters, and especially in B2B, if you're selling a $50,000 service or a $500,000 service or product, right? Totally matters to have some foot in the door of trust built before you reach out.
100%. And this is something like when you see, for example, I actually posted about this the other day as well, but if you see when you do outreach, when you compare that, if you do outreach to a warm audience or to a cold audience, meaning people that have seen your content, and you can find those by people who have visited your profile or people who have engaged on your content, etc. There are different ways. And you compare that to people who have never interacted with you in any way. If it's a warm outreach, it's almost 70% reply rate. If it's a cold audience, it's 15% reply rate. So that difference is quite significant. And I think that's the real power of content. And I'm still like a huge supporter of content. I think people should do it. The thing, I guess my main message is you should not stop at content. That's just one step, but it's just a piece of the puzzle. And there's other pieces that you also need to figure out. If your goal is not to be, an influencer and to sell, info products or something like that you can do mostly through content. But if you're selling services, if you're selling high ticket things, content is one piece of the puzzle, and then you need to figure out everything else.
I agree with that. That's something I've realized over the 2 years of doing this video thing that I've been doing is I was onboarding in the beginning. I was onboarding anybody as a client who wanted to do video. And trust me, if anybody wanted to do video, this was the perfect fit for them because it was low friction and we interview them. There's no lift they have to do. They just have to show up to a call once a month and all their videos done, right? Pretty attractive offer for folks. But what I started noticing was that I was getting a lot of churn from these folks, especially the solopreneurs. And I started looking at why was that? And I noticed is because they didn't have these other systems in their businesses. To your point earlier, it was like they were using this as their sole marketing plan. Like, this is it. Just a short video once a week or so on LinkedIn. And I don't even do that as a video guy. I have other systems. And so I started looking at my systems and looking at what our ideal clients were doing. And I realized, yep, the best clients are the ones who they got a regular webinar they're doing. They're not afraid to send messages, not just wait for the messages to come to them. They're doing offline, non-LinkedIn activities. They're attending networking groups. They're speaking on stages, et cetera, et cetera. And so now when we vet clients, I definitely look for that. And I say, this probably, like, we'll take you on, but I'll take your money, but I really want you to know this is not going to be the best fit for you unless you also start doing other things, and I'll help them. I'll guide them. I've done all these other things. I have a background similar to you doing other things other than video in the marketing world. But yeah, to your point, you need to have multiple systems working together. You could call them tactics, but under one big strategy in order to build trust. A little bit of, I call it both boxing gloves, right? If you just use content, it's like boxing with one glove. Use content with outreach. That's now, or a similar strategy, tactic. Now you've got both gloves on and you can really go to town with the fight. You can really stand toe to toe with the adversary. That is whatever you want to call it, lack of leads or whatever.
I think a lot of people talk about it on LinkedIn, but unfortunately, LinkedIn and any social media platform becomes like this game of who wins attention, kind of like the message of those that win the attention game is what everyone consumes. And then they start believing the things that those people are saying. And then it's obviously the people who generate the most attention are the ones that are the best at content. And they are the ones that are preaching content, Whereas on the flip side, it's a little bit more challenging to convince people. And I think that there's also this thing, I mentioned before about people not being comfortable and also people being overwhelmed about having to do everything. Like, it's just easier if I tell you, look, all you have to do is show up to the call and we'll do the videos. It makes people feel like, oh yeah, that I can manage. But tell them, look, you also have to do DMs. You also have to do email. Then they start to feel, man, I can't really do this. And even if they know that's the best approach, they kind of like convince themselves it's not for them because they're not going to be able to manage it. So I think it's part of that. And
yeah, it's human psychology, trying something new, building a new habit. And I really like what you said earlier about how business owners, they don't go into the vast majority are not sales trained. They wish, I think we all wish deep down that if I just do the right work, the right people will show up, the right people will come to me. And that can happen if you reach a certain level, to your point about these personal brands. But that's not what it takes if you're not a household name or quasi almost household name, you have to have a different strategy, right?
100%. And it's funny, one of my clients used to be he is a sales coach. He's not a client anymore, but that was back when we were doing content only for him. He's a sales coach and he's like a super, super good sales coach. And his offer was, I think, very appealing to the solopreneurs of the world, small business owners of the world. And the whole premise was, I'll help you increase the number of sales calls that you convert into actual clients. So let's say you have 10 calls a month. You're closing 1 out of 10. I'm going to coach you so that you close 4 out of 10. And to me, it was like a no-brainer because that was like an instant ROI on the investment. Like you paid him to coach you and it would pay it by itself, right? Like just from closing those additional clients, you would pay for the coaching to learn a skill that would always serve you well. And funny enough, he struggled to get clients on LinkedIn for that offer. And the reason I think he struggled for that was solopreneurs and business owners don't want to sell. Like
it's that visceral reaction to selling. And I'm familiar with that. I'm a video guy. How people have the same visceral reaction. Oh, video. Oh no. And then they try it. I'm like, oh, it's not that hard, but it's a huge visceral hump to get over.
Exactly. It's like you push them too much out of their comfort zone and then it becomes like a thing that they're not willing to do.
Well, this is good. Thank you so much for your time today, Matt. When, your ideal buyers are the high ticket coaches, consultant, agency owners type folks like that, similar to me. Those are my ideal clients. What's one piece of encouragement or advice? And you've given me a lot of good takeaways, good gold nuggets, but if you could leave us with one takeaway or one piece of advice for that audience today, what would it be when it comes to their content or their approach to LinkedIn?
I think the biggest kind of like thing that I realized, and it's going to sound so obvious when I say it, but it's kind of like a thing that's so easy to forget. And you kind of like mentioned it before, is the majority of people are not going to reach out to you. Even if they love your content, even if they consume your content all the time, human beings are procrastinators, and they also are distracted all the time, especially on social media. So assuming that just because someone is consuming your content and really engaged with your content, that they're immediately going to raise their hand and say, hey, Justin, I want to work with you, is a wrong, the wrong way to think about it. And I think once you realize that there's a lot of people probably in your existing LinkedIn connections that you can simply sign as clients, or at least get interest from them if you are proactive and you reach out to them. So I think that that's like a big takeaway that anyone looking at this probably can take from this. Be proactive, because clients don't fall on your lap. If you're investing in the content and you are building this presence on the platform, not only LinkedIn, anywhere really, be proactive and reach out to them, because that's how you actually get people to want to work with you, or to actually end up signing. And it's funny, I've been working with someone on the platform, helping them get clients. He has like a big presence on the platform, and he signed 4 new clients in the first 10 days of us working together. And all it took was us identifying who are the people consuming his content, visiting his profile, and then reaching out to them, just starting a conversation with them. And he closed clients in the chat. It wasn't even like this whole complicated sales process. It's just reaching out.
Beautiful. Yeah. Being the initiator in the conversation. That's all you're doing. And most of us just need somebody to initiate with us to help make something happen. That'll help us. So if you look at sales that way, that's a good perspective. That's my takeaway from today's conversation. Thank you, Matt, for being here. Where can we learn more about you?
LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn is my platform. So anything, if you want to reach out, just send me a message on LinkedIn, or my content I try to post. I've been cutting down a little bit on the number of posts that I do, but I try to post the same stuff that we've been talking about here. I talk about that on LinkedIn.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you again, Matt.
Thank you.